Welcome to the BODcast with Alli and Chris. I'm Alli Covington, founder of Bod by Alli Covington, and
I'm Chris, CTO and co-founder of Bod by Alli Covington.
Welcome to our second episode. And I wanted to start off today, Chris, by giving you some updates on where we are with all things Bod. You ready?
Sounds exciting. That sounds exciting.
Okay,
there's exciting things happening.
There are exciting things happening. Okay, so not only first, before I get into like the really cool client comments and stories, I had the first meeting with the first marketing agency to get the data and the plan together for the investor this morning. And as we were going through things, and I was telling them everything that I already knew about our demographics and what we know works and, you know, what the challenges are and things like that. He asked what our price point was. And I told him between 97 and 197 a month.
Right.
And you know, his response was, his response was 197 a month for personal training. That's cheap. I said, thank you.
Oh, wow.
I think so too. I said, there's a lot of online.
Yes. He had almost the opposite reaction that we got on Friday with like, that number's going to have to come down.
Right. His exact response was, that's cheap for personal training. He's like, I would even like try it at 197 for a couple of months. And then when I know I love it and want to continue, I would just pay for a whole year up front and get it for 97 and save myself some money. I said, good. Right. That's what we're looking for.
Well, there are people who go out and get personal training that pay more per month than what we are charging per year.
Oh, yes.
Easily.
I mean, they're charging
That's not even like
more
high end.
They're charging more in one session than our minimum amount is for a month. More than $100 a session. So I said, well, there's a lot of online trainers that are charging 500 plus a month. And he looked at me like, really? I was like, yeah. So I think my prices are really good. He's like, yeah. I went, okay, cool. And all I could think was, wouldn't it be really fun if we offered the lower price and nobody took it because everybody wanted the extra attention? And we just had to
offer the lower price that is just the app, and then have the higher price that is like the personal training part of it too,
the touch of it. Yeah. And then wouldn't it just blow the investor's mind that it stayed at that level?
Spend $200 a month.
Yeah. And we could easily hire great trainers to help do that with us. So yeah. So that also led into a client conversation so one of our clients, she's got a really rare medical condition. And she had a number of strokes years ago, which led to neurosurgery 10 years ago, which led to her having to relearn how to walk again. And she's had migraine headaches for a very long time, where she has to get injections. And what our goal was, she and I devised a goal together that we want, instead of her having this flare up of migraines that would take her out of life for a week or more, sometimes 10 days, depending on how bad they were, that instead of that happening every month, if we could push it to 6 to 8 weeks and then to 10 weeks, that would be a huge demonstration of progress. And maybe she could start coming down on the amount of medication that she takes.
It would be a huge relief in terms of like anxiety of living with that on a constant basis as well, right?
Absolutely.
The more space you can get in between there, the more sane you're going to feel.
Absolutely.
So it's very huge.
We call them flare-ups. Her last flare-up was in May.
Wow. That's 2.5 months ago.
I know. 10 weeks. I said, as we're talking,
that's a big quality of life improvement.
It's a big quality of life improvement. And her neurologist was so pleased that she dropped her medication by 20%.
Which is going to drop the side effects from that medication, which is also going to improve quality of life.
Yeah. And so one of the things I was explaining to her is, if your body has dysfunction, medication does a really good job of elevating it to function. But if your body is becoming more fundamentally functional at a systemic level, then medication will cause it to be dysfunctional. So we want to, as you're gradually improving, we want to gradually be moving away from the medication, because ultimately the goal is to get off of it altogether and rarely, if ever, have another headache again, right? And so with her medical condition,
just the ones you would normally expect, right?
Right. With her medical condition, it's, not uncommon at all to have migraines. It makes a lot of sense that she would. But so she was super happy. She said, I just wanted you to know, like, not only are we coming off of another medication that I've been on for 10 years and we're coming off of that, and we're like starting to decrease the dosages. But my neurologist today was like really happy she decreased my migraine medication. I went, oh my God, I'm so happy. I said, I'm so proud of you. She's like, well, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of us. I was like, okay, we do make a good team. I'm proud of us too.
Yeah, no doubt. And those are the stories that make a lot of this worthwhile. Like putting in the long hours, putting in the uncertainty of when it's going to work, when it's going to pay off, when an investor is going to show up, our client's going to like it. And then you hear something like this,
are we making a difference?
You just changed someone's life. Like you didn't just make a small difference. You didn't just help them lose 20 pounds. You took them out of misery, pain, and suffering, and gave them a reason to smile in the morning.
Yes. And what's even more important on top of it is she was saying that, because she just started in January with me, and she had been sedentary for a very long time. And now she has a puppy. And even though she hasn't gotten back into her workouts since the puppy came into her home, because the puppy's been keeping her up at night. Puppies are like, infants. You bring them home from the hospital and then you get no sleep for about 3 weeks. Yeah. But she's logged 12,000 steps a day just dealing with the puppy. And she goes, Alli, there's no way I would have had the endurance to do this. I was like, I get that you feel good. I want to keep you that way. I want you to slow down just a tad. Slow down a tad because you feel good. So you're going for it. And I totally get it. We'll get there. But I don't want a flare up. I don't want things to backslide for you. So just, hey, thank you for, keeping me in check. But the fact that her neurologist and her physical therapist are both very impressed with what I'm doing with her, that makes me feel good.
I bet it does. That's a lot of validation for what we're doing. And it takes some time. Especially
since most doctors and physical therapists, they're all medically licensed. They don't think very highly of quote unquote personal trainers. And because everybody has the same title, there's no way to differentiate those of us that have more medical understanding than those that don't, than the Instagram models that are like, oh, follow me for personal training advice.
Right. That's unfortunate because there definitely are a lot of those.
Discussing. There are. Well, that was something I was discussing with the marketing team. I said that they're like, what's the biggest challenge? I'm like, your biggest challenge is going to be, differentiating me from the Instagram models. And, let me show you how to do a hip thrust. Oy vey.
Or a face pull.
We all just kind of, we all just cringed and laughed. And, they were like, they did say this. They said, well, your website does a really good job of demonstrating what's different about you. I said, thank you.
Good.
So
good.
They were very complimentary.
That's very good. Yeah. So it sounds like they have an understanding of where we're trying to go with it, and possibly even good ideas as to how to split us apart from that.
They had a couple of great ideas right off the bat. And so I might bury that lead for next time because I'm a stinker.
This is good. This is totally becoming a thing. It's just going to be, this is going to be the podcast. The first 20 minutes is just going to be, what lead did you bury today?
Right.
This is how our company is going to be run. We'll just wait until the podcast before we find out what the hell's going on in the company.
I think that's okay. I think that's okay.
I have no objection.
I'm turning off Xander's. I was thinking about our pod today while I was in and what I wanted to share and stuff like that. And now he's going to cry. Did he hurt himself? And I was thinking about Xander a lot today. What did you do? What's the matter? What's the matter? Shh, babe. What's the problem? There's nothing wrong. Oh, he's upset at his toy. All right. Oh. Well, that's a new one. I've never seen him upset at his toy before. He's looking at it and he's crying at it. I'm like, what did Scout do? Scout didn't do anything to you. He's telling you to punch the buttons on the laptop. Anyway, I was thinking about Xander because I was thinking about one of the things that people usually need when it comes to, a personal trainer. They come to a trainer to, like lose weight or get stronger, something like that. I'm just going to give him some milk while we're talking. And as proud as I am of what I've done with myself, I'm 45. I've got 3 kids. Right. One of them is a special needs toddler, and I've got my abs and I'm doing it all on my own. Right. And that was one of the things I was telling the marketing team. But one of the things I'm even more as proud as I am of what I've done for myself and our clients, I'm even more proud of what I've done for Xander. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about, I don't know if I told you everything about his story and all of his medical stuff. Come on, Bubba.
No, definitely not the whole story. You told me about how
snippets here and there.
He had some trouble during birth and then the seizures early on, and how you had worked towards a better diet. So why don't you carry on and give us the story. I'll see if I have some questions.
We've got a little guy here that when he was born, he was barely registering on the height weight scale, right? His height was always good. His head circumference was always good, but his weight he was in the bottom. Okay. Hold on a second,
He's having a moment.
Having a moment because he bit through the nipple on the bottle and it splashed him in the face. No, I think I'm going to try him one more time with this one before I change it out.
Okay, go ahead.
What?
I was going to say I can pause if you need just a minute.
Oh, let me see. If he continues to cry, then I'll have you pause it. But so he was in the 0.1 percentile of weight when he was born.
Very lightweight, premature, almost.
Well, almost premature. Yeah. Even though he was induced 2 weeks early because he stopped growing at 34 weeks. So at 38 weeks, my blood pressure was so high because of his father's abuse that they decided to induce me because they were afraid I was going to have a stroke because my blood pressure was so high. So he comes out 0.1 percentile of weight. He's in NICU because his suck, swallow, breathe reflex is not there. And he has to be on a feeding tube and then learn how to drink from a bottle.
So that part means that he couldn't breastfeed at that point.
Couldn't breastfeed, but I was giving him breast milk. And so, because it's the most nutritious, I wanted him to have all my antibodies for as long as possible. And so after about 2.5 months, that kind of ended and he was on formula. Now, mind you, he had acid reflux during this time too. So he was vomiting a lot. He wasn't keeping down his food terrifically well. And we were adding a little bit of formula to the breast milk. Come to find out later that he's got a dairy allergy. So that little bit of formula that was trying to pack the calories on was causing him to vomit up his calories. So it was a very delicately balanced situation for a while. And I couldn't get him on solid food until he could hold his head up. So we've been in physical therapy from 6 months on, getting him to get the strength to be able to even hold his head up so he could sit in a high chair with a high back on it and
Right.
hold his head up enough to eat. Mind you, he also had a helmet on, which made it harder for him to be able to hold his head up, but he had severe.
It's very top heavy.
Yes. And it was only a couple of ounces, but those couple of ounces on those little tiny muscles is a lot, you know?
Yeah.
And so he had severe plagiocephaly. His head was severely misshapen.
That's
from
what
birth.
the helmet was helping?
That's what the helmet was helping. And because he had the cord wrapped around his neck and he came out not breathing because he was asphyxiated on the way out, it caused the seizures. But I caught the seizures at 10 months old because they didn't catch it in NICU. You actually have to have a seizure on the EEG in order to diagnose it. You don't just look at them and go, I think they're having a seizure. Has to be happening while they're hooked up to the machine in order to catch it.
And his seizures at that time were not, like, people sometimes
not
think
obvious
seizures and they think a whole body convulsion like an adult seizure might have. But for a small child, it can be nothing more than, I think I remember hearing about this. It can be like just their eyes glaze over a little bit. And that's kind of all you see.
It can. Those are silent seizures. Those don't cause developmental delay. His specific type of epilepsy is very rare. Only about 2,500 kids a year get it. And thank goodness, it's really difficult to control because it's usually caused by a genetic syndrome, which he doesn't have, thank goodness. But it's very difficult to catch because it looks like a normal baby movement. So because it looks like they're just trying to
sight, in other words.
Right. So because it just looks like he's trying to sit up, you know, you wouldn't think they're having a seizure. Right. So fast forward to, he's not on solid food until he's 9 months old. Usually it's, 5 to 6 with kiddos. And I'm doing everything I can to make him gain weight. Right. So my whole career in fitness has been about helping people get rid of that excess weight. And here I am, like trying to pile it on, trying to fatten up a kid whose stomach that won't allow him to really, if he got more than 6 grams, if he got 6 grams more of fat per day, he would vomit up his dinner. So I was very accurate in how much fat he was getting, how much protein, how many carbs, because carbs can help cause seizures, right? That's why I couldn't get him into ketosis because his stomach wouldn't allow it. But the ketosis would have made it a little bit easier to control the seizures. Anyway, so I'm fighting all of these fires with him, right? And I still manage. So I'm calculating out his calories during the day, where they're coming from, what kinds of fats are best for his brain, what kinds of carbs is he getting, the proteins, all of that stuff. And can we at least try to keep some of it down? And so fast forward, right? So I'm on this every day. I'm super diligent, measuring things out every day. We get to his 2-year checkup, which was a little late because of COVID. And he's gone from, he didn't even get on the weight chart on the lines
and that was just last August.
Yeah, for a long time. Then, we go in because there had been so much time passed because of COVID between those checkups and weighing him. We go in for his 2-year checkup, and his pediatrician comes running into the room and goes, "Did you see his weight? Did you see his weight?" He's at that point like 27 pounds. He's in the 30th percentile.
That's a big difference.
The pediatrician was high-fiving me and he was like, "Really good job, Mom." I was like, "Thank you. Hasn't been easy with this little one,
No, that's a lot of challenge to overcome.
If somebody can keep their food down, that's one thing. If they don't have food allergies, that's another. But to have all of that at once and still have him gain the kind of weight that he gained, I was like, yep, I am pretty proud of that one.
I do remember that too. I remember you came home. We talked that Thursday. It was one of the most, you were super excited. You got on the phone. You just had this vibe where you were just like, this is so amazing. And I'm just like, what's going on? because I
Yeah, I
didn't
was
know
like,
too
I
much
killed
then.
it.
We'd only been coaching for like a month at that point. It was like maybe a month or so. And I was just like, I knew a little bit back then. I didn't know a whole lot, but you
I
were
didn't really
so
talk
excited
about
by it.
his story much.
Not that early, no, because we had other discussions, but yeah, and he's done amazing since. He's been doing, I mean, he's gotten to the point where he's getting very close to walking. That's been
He is
really cool
getting
to watch.
very close to walking. I mean, that was part of the challenge too, to manage the calorie in and calories out, right? Usually you hear
Being
trainers
very
on Twitter
precise,
or wherever talking about, yeah, and they always talk about being very precise, but they're usually talking about it in ways of like having a caloric deficit. And I'm over
for
here not
somebody trying to
knowing,
lose weight.
right. And I'm over
Yeah.
here not knowing how many calories is actually burning in physical therapy or in trying to move. And I'm trying to compensate by giving him more so that he can grow. And without all the numbers, I was going largely by feel with a lot of this. And so, yeah, as happy as I was to hear, all our client stories, I think Xander's probably his story and his physical disabilities and setbacks is probably one of my most proud long-term. He's one of my most proud long-term clients.
He is. He's been a client for 3 years now.
Yes, he has. and he's
And
doing very well.
and that whole point of how you have to do it very much by feel, very much by intuition. You just have to work with him constantly and know when he needs food and when he doesn't. Because I can understand that he can't talk, he can't tell you how he's feeling, he can't say I'm hungry, I'm not hungry, or I want this or that. It's just you've got to just really pay attention to him. Yeah, and that's what I noticed the most. I've noticed that with you guys together, that you can just pick up on how he's feeling and usually have an answer within, like, if not the first try, the second.
Yeah, but it's usually very subtle cues. Usually he's not crying like that, but he was thirsty.
Yeah, and that's all it took.
He was thirsty, and now he's happy playing with his toys in the background. So everyone, I apologize for the sounds that you're going to hear, but this is my special guy, and he gets to play while we're doing this.
So far, the feedback I've heard, especially the giggles so far were a win. In the last episode, he came right up to the laptop.
Computer.
Yeah, and we had the video going at that time, and he saw me on the screen, so I was like making funny faces and playing hands with him and stuff, and he was all a whole bunch of giggles, and that's what everybody heard.
Good. I heard the banging of the blinds in the background.
Right, I did hear some of that too. Yeah. It's okay.
So his story is a pretty special one too. And, I'm grateful that a lot of parents don't have to deal with a lot of that stuff. And I'm grateful that most of our clients don't have really rare medical conditions, but I'm also really grateful.
But we do have a couple that do.
We do. Not all of our clients do, but we do have some that have very rare autoimmune disorders, really rare other medical conditions.
Autism.
Yes. And so I feel like Xander really prepared me and prepared my confidence for helping them. Because I think there are a lot of trainers that wouldn't know how to help these people. And I definitely know that in the beginning of my career, I would have felt inadequate. And I don't now.
That's understandable. It's understandable when the majority of people, 90-ish%, probably high 90%, don't have some kind of condition where you need to treat them outside of a normal protocol. The normal protocol works. So most personal trainers, as well as pretty much any other profession out there, they're going to know what the normal protocol is and how to deal with anybody who falls within those parameters. But at the moment you have somebody who doesn't, it's frustrating all the way around, because it's understandable why people don't understand how to deal with them. Then it's also frustrating that there's so few people that can help them.
Right. So it made me feel really good today when our client was saying that the neurologist and the physical therapist were really happy with the way I do things. Medication. Well, and it's the diet, it's the way I have adjusted her workouts and reined her in sometimes and pushed her forward at other times, and all done remotely, right? So the technology clearly works to deliver it. But it's really this protocol that I've come up with over decades of experience. What kind of macro numbers actually work? And what is it based off of? Because the calculation worked for Xander just the same as it works for you. Mm-hmm. It's because it's based on where we're going, not on where we are, which is the criticism that I've typically had with a lot of other programs that are like,
yes, I have had those too. I've seen a lot of those programs where they basically damn near keep you in maintenance all of the time. And if you're 350 pounds and you need to lose 100 pounds of body fat, you can't eat maintenance because you're going to stay where you are.
Right. They step down too slowly, if at all. And
at all. Well, they don't really create that caloric deficit. Now, granted, you probably don't want to say, oh, I'm at 350 pounds, so I want to eat like a 200-pound person, because that's a little extreme. But I think this is where we're going to get into some of the more technology that we plan for meal planning and meal recommendations when we take somebody from where they are, whether it's 20 pounds overweight or 200 pounds overweight, it doesn't really matter because it's the same algorithm, it's the same technology. We say, here's where you are and here's what you're used to eating. Just like we take somebody who's not got a lot of muscle and we say, you're going to lift 10 pounds because that's all you can really lift, and do 10 reps or 12 reps. And then as you can do that more and more, you'll go up to 15 and 20 and 25 and 30. You'll progress. That's a normal thing to do on the fitness side of things. It is not something common to see on the nutrition side of things. And that's what we want to bring to the table. That's our big next goal. Probably our biggest differentiator as far as technology is concerned is saying, let's say you're eating 400 grams of carbs a day. That's what you're used to. We can't take you down to 50. Your body is going to revolt. Your psychology is going to revolt. You're going to have anxiety. You're just going to have all kinds of problems.
You're going to bounce, and you're not going to adhere because your identity won't have been there yet either.
So we take you down
psychologically,
to right. We take you down to 350, then 300, and even I think this is where it's going to get very interesting. Is not just dropping the carb numbers, like say 400 grams of carbs is where you were. It's like 1,600 calories.
Because it's not just that. It's fat too, and it's protein too. I mean, the whole thing works together.
But it's even more so than that, I would say. It's also the type of carbs, because
for sure,
ice cream is way different than a potato.
Oh yeah, and so way different from fruit.
And the types of things that you can think about doing in these in this technology, or that we can think about doing, is things like, well, you're used to eating all these cookies, ice cream, potato chips. Let's start to swapping out. Let's keep your carbs just as high as they were. Let's swap it out with just baked potatoes and rice and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I did with my daughter. Right. She was used to eating dessert every day, and just said, you know what? Just go to French fries. She's like, I can have just instead of dessert, like whenever you're feeling that craving for sugar, go have some French fries. And she was like,
I can have all the French fries I want. Sure.
I mean, for now,
as a stepping stone.
It is.
It's not forever. That's
right. It's not ultimately where this is not her optimum diet, but we're going to get there. And how do you work with a teenager?
A little bit at a time. Right. You do that anyway when it's a teenager. When it's a teenager that's got a taste for sugar too much, you have no choice, because otherwise you're just going to get pissed off teenager and you're never going to win.
Oh, well, because she's stress eating the sugar is the deal. She's stress eating the sugar because of the tension from her dad and I, and obviously not always being on the same page about things. So I'm like, stress eat French fries. At least the potatoes will get you some good muscle glycogen, and then you can go perform well with it, which is, or
try to stress eat some fruit, right? That's somebody, like go try to overeat on fruit, good luck.
It's really hard because of the water content. I mean,
And
I will
the
say,
water and the fiber will just fill you right up.
Yeah, most people won't eat enough bananas to make a big enough difference in anything.
Right.
But yeah, but
and bananas are pretty much the only one you could.
Right. She's an athlete though. So for her, it's not going to take a whole lot once we get her dialed in a little bit. So
I remember looking at that whenever it came to, I think it was strawberries. I was like, can you overeat strawberries? And I actually looked at what it would take to get something like 1,000 calories of strawberries. And it was it was good 5 to 6 pounds. And then I tried to eat like 2 pounds of strawberries in one sitting and I couldn't do it.
Because the water content, it fills you up too fast.
This was me at like 300 pounds. I could down a 16-inch pizza. I could not put back 2 pounds of strawberries.
Right. So that's why I get her a lot of strawberries. I always have fruit on hands for the kids whenever they want snacky foods. Cause I'm like, have your strawberries. Even put whipped cream on them. I mean, put all the whipped cream you want. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's like those coconut whipped creams that have like almost no calories to them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the one I use. But yeah, and it's got some good oils in it. Like the fat that's in coconut whipped cream or coconut yogurt or coconut ice cream, at least that has MCTs. At least that has good stuff for your brain.
And I don't know if it's too common, but there is, I'll see it thrown around now and then. And it just seems so stupid about people. Fruit will make you fat.
And then they try to dive into the biochemistry of it. Well, because it's fructose and the way your body treats fructose and blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh my God, you're getting too caught up in the minutia. Dial it back 10,000 feet and let me explain to you the basic biochemistry of how your body chooses carbs to burn versus fat to burn. And under what circumstances, because your activity level does change that.
Yeah, and there is a difference between fructose and some other sugars, right?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's getting stored as glycogen and it's getting used as glucose. So even fructose has to get broken down into glucose.
Well, the fructose is a simple sugar. That one doesn't get broken down, right?
No, it does, because it's a glucose molecule, the sucrose molecule. That's what makes fructose. It's actually 3 chains of glucose together because sucrose is 2 chains of glucose.
I think sucrose was a fructose glucose.
Right? Sucrose is 2 glucose molecules. Fructose is a sucrose and a glucose. So basically 3.
Okay.
But bottom line is everything gets broken down into glucose. Glucose is really the simplest form. It's what goes into the Krebs cycle and we get citric acid out of it.
Right.
Or you bypass that entire complicated cycle and your body burns fatty acids straight into the mitochondria. So clearly our body prefers fat as its energy source. It does not prefer all the complicated machinations it has to go through to break down carbs.
And then you get into more complex carbs. And one thing I'd always heard about when it comes to things like beans, especially, is that the carbs are so complex in beans that they don't really turn into blood sugar that easily. They will over time, but it's so slow. It's almost like a slow release sugar.
And with the fiber, it really has a negligible impact on your blood sugar. I've worn a glucose monitor and I never saw an increase in my blood sugar. Although part of that is probably because I have been eating a low carb diet since I was 20 and training for Miss Fitness. And alcohol also lowers your blood sugar.
Right.
So
mentioning that too.
Drinking something, I wouldn't drink beer because it has maltose and that is higher than glucose on the glycemic index. But wine seems to drop blood sugar pretty much the same as alcohol, as liquor. I don't drink beer, so I never. Yeah, so I don't drink beer, so I didn't try it with beer because beer just makes me feel awful and it's awful in my gut. So I don't drink beer, but I tried wine and I tried vodka, got the same blood sugar lowering effect. So it would actually be good to have it with your carbs. Now, obviously not too much, you're going to
beer.
get drunk pretty fast, but
Right.
maybe that's a good thing.
For some people, it probably is. Some people, it's sometimes that can be helpful.
It can, because a lot of people stop when they feel drunk. The ones that don't, okay, maybe they should. I rescind my advice for the alcoholics out there.
Right. There is a difference with having, too much, too long. I mean, that goes with just about everything. There's always this balance between if you can have a few drinks or other things too. I mean, there's so many different
there really
substances or activities that you can point to where they can be very helpful in certain situations. There are certain stressful situations that a couple of drinks can take the edge off and keep you from making stupid mistakes, because it will lower some anxiety for a moment. And
keep the cortisol from rising.
Right.
Which adds adipose tissue to your belly. Right. So alcohol is not it's not like smoking. That does have redeeming value to it, depending on what you drink.
Right. I've heard people talk about nicotine, but if you're going to use nicotine in that way, as like almost kind of how you'd use alcohol,
I'd use the gum.
The people that do that go with gum. Yeah.
Yeah.
If they want to use it for the mental clarity, because smoking obviously is just giving you.
It's bad for your lungs.
Tar and other bullshit.
Yeah. That's not good for your lungs. And that's the only criticism I would have of smoking anything.
And this is the whole, you'll hear about the people with their Adderall, modafinil. It's like, if you overdo them, you're going to end up being an addict, and it's going to really mess up your life. If you can do them in small amounts and not get carried away and keep it under control. Okay.
Well, and there's a big difference between what creates an addiction and what doesn't. Like, why can some people pick up cigarettes and put them down? Why can some people take cocaine once and never have it again? And why can't others? And the underlying reason is psychology. Yeah. Right? When you've got demons you're running from, it really depends on why you're having it. What was the inspiration behind the drink, behind the snort, behind the smoke, right? If your inspiration was, I'm in a great vibe, I'm having a great time, and I'm enjoying myself and my life, I think you're going to be far less likely to become addicted to a substance than if you're running from something and you're trying to numb your mind into remembering what it is that you're trying to deal with. So the deeper the demons, the bigger the chance for addiction. But if, like me, you love your life and you're celebrating it, then you're just having a good time.
Right. It's just keeping the good times where they are, or just, adding a new vibe to it. And to go on that point, that's a lot of the problems that I have had with either addiction or flirted with it in some ways over my years has been because of running away from those demons. It's because of...
Do you feel comfortable sharing some of that stuff? Because I feel like your backstory is really valuable in a lot of ways. Yeah. So can I just ask you some questions? And if it doesn't feel comfortable, you can say, I'm not ready to share that yet.
Yeah. And just for those who don't know, I don't think I've talked too much. I think I've mentioned a couple of things on Twitter now and then, but for those that don't know, me and Alli did this coaching for about the last year, and we talked about a lot of this. Pretty much, I think most of the worst stories you already know. So you know the questions to ask.
If I'm not asking the right ones and you feel like there should be more clarity around something, obviously it's a conversation, not an interview. So
yeah.
But you brought up the things that caused you to get addicted were a lot of demons you were running from. So can we start with what is your first memory of a substance that you seem to have gotten addicted to? And maybe it doesn't have to be like the situation as to why, but like maybe if your first run in with an addictive substance was sugar because you were old enough to buy it, then maybe we start there and the story kind of evolves. What do you think?
I okay. I like it.
Okay.
My first thought, whenever you were mentioning that, my first like addictive substance, I would have said was cigarettes. And that would have been around 13, 14. That was like the first long-term addiction that I had, was addicted to smoking cigarettes, pretty much a pack a day, even by the time I was in my like late teens.
Wow. That's
Earlier
a
than
lot.
Yep. Yeah, I can remember being 18 and buying almost a carton a week. And there's 8 packs in a carton.
Wow.
But now that you mention it, this goes back. I don't know if I told you this story. I might have. I was about 8 or 9 years old. This is probably like between 7 and 10 were probably my worst years. So this is probably, and sometimes it's hard to remember exactly how old I was just because it's so long ago. It's almost 30 years ago. It was around Easter. It was just after Easter, so all the Easter candies were out at the corner store. And I remember going to the corner store, and sometimes I would buy them, and but I didn't have much money. I'd get at that point, I think I was mostly stealing money from my parents. It's a much more complicated story behind all of that, but I'd raid a change dish or something like that, grab a couple of bucks, go to the corner store, buy some candy. But that wasn't enough. And I guess this is probably the first time you could really call it an addiction, because I started stealing candy from the corner store. I would go in with, it's April, it's Easter in Canada, so nobody's too suspicious of a kid walking in with a big bomber jacket on. Lots of big padding, tight waistband, right? It's one of those bomber type jackets. And I would go in and I would kind of nose around a little bit, and then I would grab a couple of things and I'd slip them into my jacket. And then I would buy one. I would always have like $1 with me or something so that I could buy a couple of things, but I would probably steal about $5 to buy one.
Wow.
And then I would go and completely eat it all. And it was, I mean, that's probably back then, especially, we're talking like 1992, 1993, early 90s. So like candy, you could get 50 cents. 50 cents worth of candy was probably like 300 or 400 calories.
Yeah.
So this might have been 1,500, 2,000 calories for not even a 10-year-old.
Wow.
And I would do that on a fairly frequent basis. Extra on top of eating meals that were served at home.
Yeah.
And I started doing that so much that I actually got kicked out of that store eventually. The guy finally stepped up and busted me after a good 2 or 3 months of this. I got so blatant about it too. Like it was almost like I knew they were going to bust me because they were eyeballing me. It's like they knew and I knew. Well, it's not that they didn't care. It's that I don't think they wanted to.
No, you didn't care.
I didn't care. No, I would wait until they turned their back, even though they were eyeballing me, as if like, I mean, this is just how egocentric you are as a kid. It's like as soon as they turn their back, it's like, oh, well, they don't see me anymore, so I can just steal away, then leave. As if they didn't like put 2 and 2 together 5 minutes later.
Right.
And
then you frequented the store.
Right.
That's ballsy. I mean,
I would come back 3 or 4 times a week.
There's some balls right there. Holy cow. Wow.
Or just completely naive and unaware.
Either way.
Either way.
Fine line. There's a fine line between ballsy and naive.
There is sometimes. And eventually the store owner busted me and I was banned from that store. And here's the problem. It was a really big problem. This is a small town of about 1,500 people. There's only two convenience stores in this town.
You just burned half of your opportunities.
Yep.
One shot. Okay.
And the other convenience store was much harder to do anything and steal from because it was way more open, way more lines of sight. This one was kind of small and tucked away. It was basically the front porch of an older house.
Oh, interesting.
It was like the guy who ran the store lived in the store. He lived in the backside of it. His kitchen was in the back and his bedroom was upstairs. And he used more or less the big porch. It was all of like 12 feet by 6 feet or 8 feet, something like that. It was, or no, 20, a little bit.
Oh, wow.
Like 20 by 8, something like that. It was tight. But it was easy to just slip in and slip out sometimes, especially when you're like 8 years old, 9 years old. And I remember this moment where my mother had asked me to go to the corner store to go get some butter because she was making some kind of recipe with my cousin. It was like a school project.
And you'd
she's
been
like,
kicked out, so you couldn't go there.
I just got kicked out like 2 months before all of this. She's like, go to the convenience store and get it. And she's expecting me to go there quickly. Well, the other convenience store is another 10 minutes away.
Oof.
So I'm like, I have to go to the other one. And I fuck up because I don't know the difference between butter and margarine at this point. I go there and I get margarine and I come back and she's like, no, not margarine. I need butter. And on the way back to go take the margarine back to get butter, I tripped and fell and spilled all the margarine all over the place. So I had a busted bucket of margarine that I had to go back to the store with, and I had no more money. It was like, and she's like, why is it taking so long? It's like the store is 5 minutes away, and I had to walk 15.
Oh,
I never told her
that's getting
about
doubly
it.
busted.
You're right. She never found out. I remember coming back to that town. Oh, I left when I was 17. I came back there probably like 25 years, when I was like 25 or 26, maybe. When my grandmother passed away. And that store was still there. And I walked into it for the first time in like 18 years.
But that felt weird.
Years. The dude who was running the store was still working behind the cash register. He looked at me and he did not forget.
Oh,
he didn't say a damn thing.
I bet those steely eyes were watching your hands the whole time.
They were too. He did not let go. He watched me the whole way through that store. I was like, this is creepy. That's a grudge you've held for 18 years. And you haven't seen me since I was a kid. He recognized me as an adult. I was like, wow. He remembered that better than I did.
Other than it feeling creepy that he was watching you, did you feel guilt? Did you feel shame? Did you feel like I deserve to be watched like this because of what I did to him? Like any of that stuff come up?
Here's an extension of the story. And this is a shorter one.
Okay.
It wasn't the end of it. That was the end of it for a while. But I did the same thing when I was 21.
Oh.
I got
why?
Really, really poor. Didn't have a whole lot of money. Didn't have a job at the time. I had enough money that this was when I was drinking a gallon of Pepsi a day. I was more like 20, I think. I was drinking a gallon of Pepsi a day. And I would go to the grocery store and I had enough money to buy the Pepsi, but not enough to get anything else. So I would go back where the Pepsi was, and they had like these bags of M&Ms, like the big bags, the 2,000 calories worth of M&Ms.
Right, because the 2,000 calories of Pepsi wasn't nearly enough sugar.
No, it wasn't nearly enough. So I'd have to get the M&Ms, which were like $4, the peanuts, which were $1 or so, and I'd grab a couple of those. I'd walk out of there with about... What's that?
What? No, I was going to ask a question, but I want you to finish your sentence. Sorry.
So I would walk out of there buying the two 2-liter bottles of Pepsi and have my jacket stuffed with another like $5 or $6 worth of candy. And this is at 20. So I was repeating it.
Is this what a crack addict would look like?
Oh, funny you mentioned that because there was about a 2-month period of that too.
It's not funny that I mentioned it. I knew that one. I didn't ask about meth because you didn't spend months on meth. But I asked about the crack because I'm like, I think there's a strong correlation between sugar and crack. I think people
I do hear that one. I do hear that one get thrown up a lot. So there was a period when I was 19. I was working in a vinyl siding factory, and I'd met this guy. At the time, I don't think he was into drugs at that moment, but he had been in the past. His mother was a crack addict. His father was a crack addict. So it was there in his family. And I had started hanging out with him coming into that winter. And I had never done anything like it. I was hanging out with them, and they had some guys come up, and they had some crack. And they bought some. I had no idea what this was. This was complete naive territory for me. I was just like, what's this?
Would have been for me too.
And they were like, this is pretty strong stuff. I don't know if you want to go there. And of course, I want to like fit in
So
and
you go
not be
there.
and I was like, I can try a little bit. I'll be fine. And so I did.
Mhm.
Here's what I would say when it comes to comparing something like sugar and comparing something like crack. Sure, in the long term, probably. When you do something like crack, the first time you inhale that, it changes who you are.
Really?
It changes how you perceive the world because it
Wow.
numbs you. And I would say, like, this is what I would say about addiction in general. You did hint at something before about how you really need to have a very negative emotional past in order for addictions to really have any grip. I think people who have like a fairly positive past could probably do some hard drugs and just be like, I don't even like this. And they wouldn't
Yeah.
give the same effect. Like for me, when I inhaled that crack for the first time, I felt this numbness and all the pain went away.
It
It
was a
was just
relief.
like, it wasn't, no, relief is
Oh.
what you get when you like inhale a joint or have a drink. This
Oh.
was like, oh my God, I don't feel pain anymore. Like I don't feel it anymore.
Ah.
It's gone. It was beyond euphoria. It was beyond an orgasm. It was beyond anything. Because I had been you don't realize how much pain you're holding on to until it
Until
goes
you get
away.
something like that.
Which is why
Mm.
when you hear people that get addicted to heroin, I never went near heroin. Like once I had tried cocaine, crack and cocaine, and those are uppers, not downers. Morphine and
Hmm.
heroin are downers. And what I've heard of those, it's like if someone like me were to do something like those, there might not be a coming back.
I heard that too. In fact, I've heard that
So
about heroin for damn near anybody.
I don't know about that because I do know there are cases of people who can do heroin recreationally and they're absolutely fine, but you hear the
Really?
stories and you're just like, they're completely normal human beings. They don't have the childhood trauma. They
Okay.
weren't molested or raped or, something really traumatic. And it was
Right.
always, I remember
Okay.
hearing this statistic of this guy from, he's kind of a drug addiction researcher
Okay.
out of Vancouver, and one of his statistics that he had over 25 years of working in drug rehab, he's like over 95% of women who are addicted to heroin were raped before they were 16 years old.
Wow.
That's not just a correlation,
No,
right?
that
That's
sounds
not
like a
that
strong causation
right. Well, it sounds like a
right
very
there.
strong reason why they end up that addicted that they can't break it, that they end up in these
Right.
rehab clinics.
Too much
Now,
pain.
and it takes it away. I was just like, oh
Hmm.
my God, this took it away. No, eventually I think I was smart enough, at least, like, I don't know if it was just an IQ thing or an awareness thing, but I got a couple of months into it. And I remember we just took our bonus money. I got money for Christmas, $500 or something. And I got bonus
Yeah.
money from the job I was working on. And I just completely blew it all in one weekend. Like over $1,000, just poof. This stuff's $60 a gram. A gram lasts one person. Like that's a lot. That's a lot. To blow $1,000 in one weekend was like those couple of near overdoses in that weekend.
Dang.
Yeah. I remember
Wow.
once, like just to paint the extreme, we were in this closet in this guy's house, his apartment. And there's like four of us huddled into this closet smoking crack. And most of them, I'm looking around, I'm just like, these people are so messed up. And here I am with them, thinking I'm not. And I'm
There's
in there
denial.
and right. And this woman hands me a chunk because I had bought something like $250 worth. And she's like, you probably shouldn't hold on to that. I should hold on to that for you. There was one of those moments where it was just like I had no idea what I was doing. I let a crackhead hold on to my crack for me.
Hmm.
Um she
That
hands me this
sounds
chunk. She hands me this chunk that's probably about half a gram. Half a gram is not something you do in a single hit. That's like 5 hits. And I put the whole thing into the pipe and just pulled the whole damn thing back in one shot. My eyes rolled back in my head. I saw God for a moment and I was sweating buckets. My heart rate must have been 200 beats a minute. And I dropped the pipe, started walking outside. This is Calgary, Alberta. It's minus 40 outside. Not uncommon for Calgary, minus 35, something like that. It was cold as shit. I go outside and I drop into a snowbank to cool off in a t-shirt and shorts. And I'm laying in that snowbank. I'm laying in that snowbank thinking to myself, you know what? This might be the end and I don't even care. It's like, this is a hell of a way to go. I was kind of hoping for it. It was like, maybe this is the end. Maybe this is where I draw the line. Maybe this is where I try again next time.
So you've mentioned that twice now. You've mentioned so much backstory pain and in both of our first two podcasts that you felt like not coming back, but then you did. So what brought you back?
What I remember after that, it was slightly after that moment, I cut this guy out of my life. I remember saying something to him and I knew it would piss him off. I knew it would drive him nuts. He said something to me one night about how, he's like, if we ever got caught by the cops or something, would you rat me out? And I just I didn't know, I half heard what he said. Like, he was basically asking if I'd ever snitch, which I probably wouldn't have. I mean, I don't know if I would have or not. It's one of those things you don't really know till you're there. But like at the same time, I didn't care. And I just said, yeah, sure I would. Because I wanted to sabotage that relationship at that point. And he just gave me the perfect layup to do it. And it's so hard. Like, I look at so many of these moments that I pulled out of just pathways to hell that should have destroyed me, that destroy most people. And I think it goes back to, I mean, there was even moments in high school where I felt like throwing in the towel. I failed grade 10 math. I never got under a 95 in math. And I failed grade 10 math, but then I started to pull myself back out of it. I think I've always had a drive. I've always wanted to do more. I remember when I met you, one of the ways I remember talking about myself, you asked me like how I felt about myself in my past. And the biggest thing I'd always felt, this one's a little hard. The biggest thing I'd always felt was that I had this sense that I was wasted potential.
You had wasted your potential, or that you were?
That I was. Like, it was an identity at that point. It wasn't just a statement of the past. It was like I had identified. It's like I could have been a quantum physicist. I could have been a whole bunch of shit. Like, I tested something close to a 160 IQ in grade 10. And I mean, I did these other tests, and teachers were just like, you could have a scholarship now. Like, you should be in university. You shouldn't even be in high school. I had a teacher tell me that. And this was like in grade 11. And I'm like, you realize I just failed grade 10 math? She's like, I don't care. You are a genius. But I never could get over, I think it was the gaslighting from the stepfather, the abuse, all of this. I didn't feel like I deserved anything. I always felt like I had to earn any sort of good emotion.
I wonder if, because as you're talking, what I'm hearing is that somewhere there were seeds like that teacher that had planted enough seeds to have you have just enough belief in yourself that maybe you could do better. And maybe there was a little glimmer of hope somewhere, that instead of dying in the snowbank or never coming back from that walk, you went, what if I could?
Well, even like around that time, I was working construction. I worked construction and blue collar type jobs, manufacturing jobs from 15 till 27. And even during that time, I still liked doing computer programming. I wrote a programming language when I got off of that crack epidemic thing, I came out of that and I wrote a programming language. I wrote my own programming language. It wasn't very good.
No shit.
It wasn't like a great programming language, but it was just like, I was 20.
That was great.
And I had no background in how to write programming languages. I just went online and I started looking at other programming languages and how they were built. And I'm like, okay, I'll start making my own. And I started to. It was something very basic. It was just like, it did some calculations, it did some math problems, it had simple conditions and for loops, and it just had all
I knew
the
I got
basics.
the right guy for the job.
Well, and this is what's been so much of a change in my life since I've met you, is how much I have shifted away from that, all that negativity of the past, where it was just failure after failure and feeling like I would never accomplish anything.
I want to go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, go
I was
ahead.
going to say, I wanted to say something when you said that shift, because it triggered for me. If you've spent decades in negativity and all of a sudden you get positivity all the time coming at you from any direction, like just even one direction, you get all this positivity, it can feel overwhelming when
Oh, it was.
all you've expected is negativity. And so I remember times I'm where just now having a feeling of empathy for where you were while interacting with me. Your interaction with me, sunshine and love and happiness over here coming at you, had to feel both beautiful but like overwhelming, to the point where you probably didn't know, or your neurology didn't know how to process it. I'm guessing.
Some of the overwhelming thoughts I remember having were, one, I didn't want to get too connected to you because I was so worried what happens if you go away.
Sure, I can understand that. That's an attachment issue.
And I mean go away by like, I would think like, what if I go to call Alli on Thursday and she doesn't pick up the phone anymore? And I don't have any way of knowing what happened to her. Like, she might have went skiing with her kids and something happened, and it's just like, there's nowhere Alli anymore.
I can understand that.
I mean, that was probably the darkest. And that didn't happen a lot, but it was like, and similar sorts of things. It was just like, this was the only positivity I'd ever really known in this, especially that extreme. And I remember probably the biggest shift that's happened here, that I think kind of led to us finally doing this podcast, and the relationship that we have now, where it's like you just mentioned, there was attachment issues. Expected, given where I was coming from.
Completely expected by me. I know it wasn't expected by you. You were shocked and shaken for a bit. Yeah.
I think I kind of knew. I just didn't have I can remember even before I met you that I figured I was going to go through some kind of a period of an attachment type thing where I was going to get over attached to somebody.
Well, you had no choice. Like where you were coming from, it was if you were going to go up, there was going to be that type of situation. It's transference. It makes sense. So you just have to move, and this is what we discussed last year, into a like healthy realm where you have healthy attachment, and you can learn it. You can undo the past. You can. I have faith in that. And I think there are psychologists that would tell you that you can, that once you have an attachment disorder or a personality disorder or whatever, that's it. Now, I would say maybe that's true with borderline and narcissistic personality disorders. I mean, just move as far away from those people as you can. But I would say that you can learn healthy attachment.
And here's which I think is where we've gotten to. It's not, I wouldn't say it's complete. I'd say I still deal with it. I wouldn't say I struggle like I did before.
I would agree.
I would say it comes up and there's moments and I'm more aware of them, and I can just say, okay, instead of reaching out to you and asking you for help, I say, you know what? I think I'm going to eat this one. Maybe it's going to take a few extra shots of tequila or something but it's like, and whether that's the healthiest way to deal with it, it's you kind of just make it up as you
Everything's
go
baby
sometimes.
steps.
Everything's kind of baby steps. And
Right?
I think it's right. And, you know, I would never recommend shots of tequila as a way to get through something. It's just, it's one of those things you figure out on your own. I never had too much of an alcohol problem, I guess, in my life.
Well,
There was some time in high school where I drank too much. That was probably one of my first things that I dipped into, and drank to excess.
I think a lot of addiction is coming from attachment issues. So you're attaching to a substance to replace the feelings that you, or the security that you need to feel internally. Well, but I think that some spiritual, movement can make a big difference there. Because I would still say I wouldn't want you attached to any other human to a large degree. Your wife, your kids, or whatever. Yes. That's attached to who you really are, to God, to the universe, whatever name you want to put on it, that bigger energy that we know connects us to everything else. Yeah, that's the attachment you want to have.
We'll share a bit of a love for the movie The Matrix and that whole concept of source. That there is a source energy that you all, and whether you're spiritual or not, whether you just look at all this as woo-woo or not, it's like there is, we all have this sense that there's your body, there's your brain, and then there's this otherness to you. There's your spirit, your soul, your energy. Yeah.
The quantum physics nerd in me comes out in this moment. And I want to talk about the field for a minute, the 0 point field. So the 0 point field, and it's going to be a different definition by physicists, but there are a number of books, and this is my personal experience extrapolation from this that I read in, 2016-ish, was written by Lynn Taggart, called The Field. She wrote it a long time before that, but it discusses, it's a very heady book, so I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. It takes a little while to get through, but it does discuss this experiment that was done in the 70s by some grad students, and they were trying to disprove the theory that there is energy or like some type of life force that runs through us. And so they built this machine where they would measure the photons of light that were emitted from the bonds in a double helix. And as they pulled apart the double helix from a healthy organism, there were more photons of light, and they could measure them. And if it was a diseased organism, a person with cancer, those cells, or a dying leaf, it didn't really matter. But if it was diseased and dying in some way, there were fewer photons emitted from their DNA. And so I get that somebody could take that in a lot of different directions. Where I took it was, there is light within the cells within us, in the intercellular, spaces within everything. And that is what holds all of us together. And that is what we are connected to. And that is why I maybe sound naive when I equate quantum physics to God, but it is the equation that I put together. And it's what makes sense to me, because there is a very real amount of energy that runs through everything that is absolutely undeniable, unless you're an idiot. And it's a tremendous amount of energy, and we are all connected to it. So everything that we do to somebody else in negativity actually hurts ourselves, because we're putting all of that out there. Huh, baby? Yeah. Hi.
It's the type of thing, like, whether or not it's accurate and correct, there's enough truth to it that there's probably something there, because we all, like, before I met you, anything spiritual, I was pretty tied up in the atheist camp of ideologies. Not that I tied into them too heavily. It was just, all the religious camps, I was
it's not like religion gives you too many options.
Not really. That was my bigger problem. It was like religion just wants to beat you over the head with their rituals and do things our way or else.
It's just something humans are making up, right? Something that humans have made up to try to make sense of a world that they didn't have the ability to make sense with. But now, as technology has increased, we do have a greater ability to make sense of all of this. 2,000 years ago, there was no quantum physics. We didn't understand that. We were just getting the Pythagorean theorem, right? We had just, started looking at constellations and stuff and started naming things.
Yeah.
We still had a polytheistic religion in a large portion of the religious world. So I don't blame us. I don't blame the human race for not having all the answers. What I am blaming them for is not being open-minded to new answers.
Here's a lot of what changed my mind. Maybe this is something that we'll talk about in future podcasts to not stretch this out when I was too long. But what really changed my mind on a lot of this wasn't some book that you gave me. It wasn't some story that you gave me. It was this simple fact that at the very beginning when we met, I have a very guilty until proven innocent relationship with most people that I meet for the first time. I
can understand that.
Generally look at most people and think, I trust you until you hurt me, because I've just been hurt too many times. I'm too biased in the other direction.
I could use a little bit of that myself.
This goes to my point a little bit as to like how we connected. It was like, whenever I met you, I trusted you. And it wasn't like I trusted you a little bit and then a little bit more, a little bit more. I trusted you on a level that seemed supremely uncomfortable to me, but I did it anyway. And I didn't understand why. And I even remember I told you about this conversation that I had with this other woman on Twitter who I didn't know at the time, but you two had a moment and then a falling out. And
no, there was no falling out. It was just all of a sudden.
Okay,
never mind.
Yeah.
There was no communication. You have to have the communication for a falling out. There was just all of a sudden, I am dead. Okay.
There was a parting of ways.
Yes.
But I had this moment. This was 2 days before I asked you. Actually, it was the day before I asked you to start coaching, because we started on July 7th. This conversation happened on the 5th. And I think I asked you on the 6th, because we kind of did it the next day. It was just like, hey, do you want to get started right away? This conversation that I had with her, I went back and read it. It was full of, I don't know why I trust her so much. This seems so absurd. And she had all this feedback of like, yeah, you shouldn't trust other people like that. That is absurd. And it was just like, I don't know, the way she came across, I was just like, actually, I think you're wrong and I'm right. And I don't know why. And
good for you for following your intuition.
And we went from that to, there was the first week that we mostly just talked about career type stuff. We came up with this plan, because that was kind of the original starting point. Was I had this new job, startup, CTO kind of position that I was aiming for, and I wanted your help with it. And
you're trying to manage some more difficult relationships in that leadership role than you felt like you were capable of managing. So I just kind of helped navigate you through some of that stuff. Yeah.
And then on week 2, I remember that first week, something I mentioned to you was, and then we probably get into some childhood stuff. And you had this response like, well, if we need to, almost like as if you were dismissing it. And I remember that was the moment I thought, oh, she doesn't know what she's in for. There was just like, oh.
Why? Because you thought you were going to be supremely difficult at that point? Because your past had been difficult? But see, my point to saying it that way was, your past does not dictate your now or your future. Right. And if we need to, I guess we will, but we can move forward without having to dig up the past and bring it into your present. It can stay where it was back there. Move forward. You don't always have to make peace with it. Sometimes you can just let it go. Okay.
And at that time, I think I was too clung into it. I was too stuck in it. And I was like, no, I don't know how to let this go. So like the second week, what we talked about was something along the lines of, this is where you gave me, because I think we started to get into it somewhat. I started to talk about this like abusive stepfather that I had and how it was bothering me a
Mm-hmm.
lot. And we might have chatted earlier in that week on text. And this is where you
Mm-hmm.
gave me the story about Xander's father and the abuse that he
Yeah.
did to you. Do you want to tell that story a little bit, or do you want me to?
Um,
I mean, I
there's
can.
so much. You start, because there's
Okay.
so much that I could say that it could lead into a whole nother hour.
Right.
So
And
why don't we start here, and then we'll see kind of where it goes.
the basics of the story goes something like this. You had a moment, you were being abused, and it was getting to a point, but you had no evidence. You had no evidence of,
While I was pregnant, by the
well, you
way.
were right. You were pregnant with Xander. He turned abusive during the pregnancy,
Hmm.
and there was no black eyes. There was no broken. There was nothing you could go to the police and be like, "Look, he literally broke my arm" or something like
Yeah,
that.
I need a restraining order now. Yeah, nothing that I could
Right.
do that with.
And they can't say, "Oh, well, he yelled at you." That's not
Or he put
evidence.
his
That they
fist
can't.
through the wall, or he imprisoned
Right.
you, but that's your word against his.
Right.
Yeah.
There's too much hearsay in that.
Yeah.
And you told me that story, and you told me about that moment where you were like, you wanted him to hit you,
Yeah.
where you were like, I want this, just
I
it's
want it
gonna
to end. So
right,
give me what I need to make it
right.
end. Yeah.
And
Because
I remember you telling that, and you didn't know this at the time. Maybe you kind of felt it, but I remember you telling me that story, and there was two feelings I remember. One was this flashback, because when I was 9 years old or 10, somewhere around there, I had the exact same moment with my stepfather. Literally, textbook. I was just crying inside. Like, Jesus. It was the moment where I realized you were the right person for this, because I realized I
mm,
didn't have to tell you everything. You just
mm,
understood it. If you understood that, what that felt like, I was like, oh, if she understands that, then I'm going to be okay. That was one
yeah.
of those first moments that I felt like that. It was like, okay, this is going to be hard. This is going to take a
Mm.
lot. But I trusted you probably just a couple of orders of magnitude more. If I hadn't have trusted you so much already, it was just like it found new levels at that moment. And this was just a week later.
That had to feel
Um,
really overwhelming. And by the way, I just love the
mhm.
irony of this happy little music coming from this happy little dude.
I know. I can hear it in the
Uh,
background too. He's just playing away, like
he's
completely
having a
oblivious
blast.
to what's
I
going
love that
on.
he is. I love that he
And
is, because
then
he lived through enough of it while he was inside me.
and the other feeling I remember having that at that time was
Mm.
this feeling of protectiveness towards you. I remember that was the first moment. We've talked about this kind of just recently. It's kind of led to a new development between us, but like that was one of those first moments I felt that. Like I felt like I wanted to protect you against him, sort of thing.
Hmm.
And I think where it comes from to some extent was feeling like I couldn't protect my mother.
Oh, I can understand that.
Yeah, like I
That
think
seems
that's a
very
big.
logical.
Right. Like I was a kid. Obviously, I couldn't,
Right.
because he hit her too. He didn't just attack me. He didn't hurt her as
Then,
much because she wouldn't have stuck around. She was an adult. He could gaslight me way more than he could gaslight her.
yeah,
Um,
that's always the case.
and but it was one of those first moments where I kind of felt that way, and I was just like, I remember feeling like you were telling the story, and I'm just like, I want to get my hands on him right now.
Hmm.
It was just like I
Well,
want to
you're in
teach
good
him a
company.
lesson.
You're in good
Right.
company, because every good person, every good man that's heard the story has had the same reaction.
Right. Yeah, and it's the kind of thing where it's just like, but it was I guess it was kind of that combination of things that just led to, I mean, the very next story. So the next week I tell you my story, which was almost the exact same version, just a 9-year-old's version of it. And
Hmm.
this was also, it was when I realized that I mean, this was kind of the next level of trust, was when I told you about how I had never had any intimate experiences with women before.
Hmm.
At 36 years old, I remember what I wrote. It's like, I've never had a relationship. I've never had sex. I've never even kissed a woman before. And I put this like
Hmm.
supreme unhappy face at the end of it.
Hmm.
And I remember writing that. I went out to the woods to write it. I wrote the first part of it not too bad. Everything kind of came out. It flowed. I got to that last part and my hand would not stop shaking. I damn near threw up. I was sitting out there. It took me a good 20 minutes to get those dozen or so words out because it was so much. And I was like, I don't even have to show this to you. I'm just writing them down out of my head onto a piece of paper in the woods that I can throw away and nobody will ever see.
Right.
But in my mind, I thought, no, I don't really want that. I do want to tell you about this because this was at that point probably the most shameful thing I had inside, the most painful, burning shame that was inside of me, because it was the kind of thing that, going through your 20s, that's something you can get teased for pretty damn hard, and in a way that there's a couple of suicide attempts in my early 20s from this.
I mean, let's put this in perspective. What you just said is coming from societal norms.
It is.
That's it.
A bunch of expectations that people have of how you should have behaved, that you're not normal, that there's something wrong with you.
There's a label put on you unless you behave or have done certain things within a certain time frame. There's something deficient about you. That's how humans tend. Right. That's how humans typically work. Right. That doesn't make it true just because humans are good at making shit up.
No.
Look at, like, they've spent millennia holding on to the same stuff and completely dismissing the teachings of these people that they are holding up in effigy. They're completely dismissing the teachings and holding up, completely ridiculous ideas of what that means. It's like, just like, stop listening to other humans. And I would even throw myself in that. Like, listen to yourself. Like, you have been through a lot. You have not been ready for a woman. If you had women during any of this period of time, you'd have fucked them up because you were so fucked up. Excuse my French. Absolutely. Yeah. It would have been way worse, like magnitudes of way worse.
Could you imagine if I had met a woman and gotten romantically involved when I was
and then had a kid, and then you could have never pulled yourself out of that because you would have had
imagine the combination.
You would have had responsibilities, and you would have messed up multiple lives. I mean, the fact that you didn't means you should be holding yourself in high regard, that you worked on yourself until you got to a healthy place where you could be a good influence on somebody else and not just another one of those guys, because there's enough of them in the world that have come from where you've come from and use the societal norms to push them into behavior that then messed up other lives. Maybe Xander's father is one of those types of people, and maybe he should have kept himself to himself until he got himself worked out. But then again, Xander wouldn't be here, and he is the epitome of unconditional love, and I love him unconditionally. So yay us. But still, the point is, you should be congratulating yourself for not falling into that trap.
I think I'm at the point now. I don't know if I'm there yet. I know I'm not there yet, because if I'm saying I don't know if I'm there yet, then I'm not.
Good point.
But I would say that I'm at least at the point now where I can recognize that I'm not
sorry. Your international high-speed train today just arrived at the station. Anyway, so you're now at the point.
I'm now at the point where it's like I don't feel broken. I don't feel
because you're
like
not.
There's something wrong with me. I feel like it's just work to do. And
if you hadn't had the actual character, if you weren't who you were, you would have checked out. or you would have hurt somebody else, because hurt people, right?
And I think that's what I couldn't do. I think that was a big feeling of why did I isolate myself in the last 5 years?
So you didn't hurt anybody
I
else. I get that.
And that's how
That's
I
a
felt.
huge
There were
sense of
times,
responsibility. That's a tremendous amount of character.
yeah, I moved from Alberta, where I was living in an apartment and just not feeling like I could connect with people, not feeling like I could be responsible. And I moved back to where I grew up, of all fucking places. Literally the town I grew up in. Like, if that's not a metaphor for something, sweet Jesus. I mean, that's where we did all the healing. Like, I went back to the place I grew up with, like 20 some odd years later. Then I met you, and then we did all that healing in that place. Like, it was a trip. But and the growth that I've had lately and where I'm at now I don't look at it as, there's probably a lot of women out there who are even my age or slightly younger who are in that category of women that I'm interested in starting a family and that kind of stuff. Probably a lot of them would look down on me and say, not even gonna waste my time with you. That's okay. I'm okay with that. I found some peace with that, because that's true of every guy. There is no guy out there who appeals to 95% of women. They might, looks wise, you get some celebrity type guys who have that, but would they actually, on a personality level? A lot of them wouldn't, right? They were like, once you actually get into the details of connections and relationships and feelings and emotions, you'd find that a lot of those relationships would fall apart, because not all of them, but some of those guys that look really good are also pretty arrogant and egotistical. Kind of comes somewhat with the nature of being, just being told you're special all the time. So I guess the way I look at it now is, there are plenty of women out there who would appreciate who I am, would appreciate the lessons I've learned, would appreciate the kind of person I am, that I didn't just devolve into, I brushed up against drugs and didn't devolve into it, brushed up against all kinds of bad situations and realized, that's not my path. I can do better. I can find better. And for 20 years, from 17, that's when I left home, until now, I'm 37, and still have not really fallen down any dark paths. Came real close, but always came to the edge of that abyss and said, I think I can do better. And then turned around and found a mountain to climb. And for the last year and a half, I've literally done nothing but climb mountains. Like, I've become almost a mountain climber. It sucks sometimes. It's still hard. It ain't easy. Therefore, I'm a couple of drinks in.
Yeah, no, but this is, I hear resilience. I hear strength. I hear character. I hear a lot of stuff that any good woman that wants to have a family is going to grab, and like, screw what society says about what age you're supposed to lose your virginity.
Right.
Because there's a lot of kids that are rushing to beat that, because it makes them feel like they're better than their peers, because they did it sooner, because they were wanted sooner.
And on that side of it,
that's not
sad.
Healthy.
No, like the whole, like, oh, I want to lose my virginity at 15. Like, why? What's so special about losing it early? It's like, I do remember there was this post, and I know you remember because we talked about it a little bit. There's this guy made a post. He's like, probably the healthiest relationships are people that lose their virginity or sex for the first time in a good relationship, probably in their like early 20s. You're responsible enough, you understand the consequences enough, you're enough of an adult that's about the time you should actually be looking to have a relationship and a family. Other than that, you are a teenager who's giving pleasure a priority over other things in your life, that's the unhealthy part, I would say.
I would agree with that. And
then his other comment on the end of that was, every year you go beyond that point probably ends up with intimacy issues later.
No, and that's where I'm going to disagree, because I remember you and I talking about this, And
Mhm.
I don't know that it necessarily ends up being intimacy issues as much as it is potentially gaslighting yourself, where you're lying to yourself and saying, oh, well, since I didn't do it, or since I did, because there's oftentimes an insecurity that's just, I don't have the courage. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't feel comfortable enough in my own skin to approach this girl. And so because you don't approach, you don't get. And I don't know that that means an intimacy issue as much as it means a confidence issue. And so, yeah,
And is it just a confidence issue of doing, or is the confidence issue something else, something deeper?
It's doing, and it could come from something deeper. But at the end of the day, you can overcome the something deeper just by muscling through it and taking the action. And once you take the action once, it becomes easier to do it again. Just like, I don't know, craft. Anyway.
But okay.
Okay. But the thing about that is, like, if it's just about having a conversation and getting the girl and getting her to, like, just getting her to say yes, what I think it is more about, if it's beyond that frame, it's not about intimacy. It's about gaslighting. It's about lying to yourself. It's about starting to tell yourself a story to maintain your current comfort zone, as opposed to pushing yourself out of it and making yourself do it regardless. And that is where I think maybe some societal pressure could be valuable, because you would gaslight yourself into thinking, well, I'm going to be a loser if I don't, so I should at least try. And there's the recipe for growth that would do it. And maybe that's where the guy was coming from. But I really don't want anyone to link their virginity age to an intimacy issue, because then they start to gaslight themselves into saying, well, there's bigger problems with me. And then they head down this rabbit hole. And it doesn't have to be as monumental as an intimacy issue. It can be as simple as, I got overweight because I was upset because my parents got divorced. And so because I was overweight, I didn't feel confident. I felt like the girl wouldn't want me. She'd want somebody else. And so the longer I waited, the more it weighed on me, until I finally froze from inaction and felt like a complete loser. Right? Like, this is not about intimacy. This is about confidence. This isn't about your ability to, because you trusted me when you didn't feel like you had any reason to. And that is a very beautiful thing that happens in adolescence. You trust people even though you don't have a reason to.
And I can
just trust people because they feel like you can trust them.
And I remember, but by this point in my life, I didn't trust anybody. And I remember being online trying to find somebody to trust. There were like a couple of other people that I came close to contacting before I met you, but it didn't take much. It took so little. I could find out one thing about them and it was like, nope, they're no good anymore. And it wasn't just that you checked.
So are you saying you didn't find anything bad about me?
I'm not going to go there.
Are you saying that I am perfect? Just kidding. So kidding about that. But
no, I think it was.
I'm sure I've burped at least once in my life. Kidding.
Yes, I'm sure you farted a couple of times too.
Shut up.
You're saying...
All right, go on.
So I get the one comment that I had about what you said earlier was, what I feel has helped me the most as well is when you start to find, I never felt connected to myself. I never even knew that was a concept. I never knew I wasn't, because I'd never been anything.
For as smart as you are, okay.
Yeah, it was never a concept. It was never something I considered that there was a connection to or not to yourself. It was just never even there. It was like I almost related to being blind to some extent.
How did you enjoy quantum physics and not feel any kind of, like, I don't know,
it was all analytical
toward being connected to yourself?
It was all analytical to me. I looked at it completely as an outside observer, looking at the world, but never thinking about how it affected
Now
me.
that makes sense.
Right.
See this?
So like, and what has happened lately, I would say, you know, as you would know, things have changed the last couple of weeks, but like the biggest difference of the last couple of weeks is feeling that sense of connectedness. And I can remember moments where I've thought about what you said about like, yeah, you should just go out and get some experience because you'll just have confidence from doing it. And I don't know why I felt some pushback on that. I know you threw out that it might be some denial of wanting to do the work. And I considered that. I let that roll around in my head. And I remember going on this hike about a week and a half ago. And it was like a 15-mile hike through the hills of Mexico. And it was like steep hills, a lot of rough terrain. One of the things I remember coming out of that with was this sense of it's not really about, for me at least, the way I feel about it, it's not really about getting the experience. It's about, first, at least,
being
getting
ready.
getting my priorities straight, getting my life straight. It's like maybe the experience part will come, but it was almost like the feeling I got from the universe as it was that's not my number one priority, at least not right now. It's just that maybe it's too early to focus on that. Maybe there's too many other things, or maybe it's just not going to matter. Maybe like the way I kind of thought about it was maybe the woman who's right for me isn't going to give a shit about that.
Well, I told you that early on. When you first told me that, I was like, yeah, so, and your reaction, I remember, was like, what do you mean, yeah, so? And I was like,
I do remember that too. Because that was the thing. I remember telling you about it.
Sex. And it's not like, come on.
Right.
Right. And you were like,
well,
but
that's
no,
that
it's
whole
everything.
notion
I'm
of,
like, it's not. Right.
Right. Well, good. And maybe there's a difference between how men and women get this pushed on them.
Mm-hmm.
Because for men, you are almost told it is everything from damn near the time you fucking have an erection for the first time in your life. Huh. Like you are 13 years old, you get a boner for the first time, and you are basically told, yeah, you got to learn how to use that thing or you will never get laid, or you will never get a woman, and all this
You'll
stuff.
never be loved.
I don't think it would ever get phrased that way, but you're right. Yeah. Because deep down, that's more what everyone wants, even if they'll never use that word or feel that way about it. And that's the way I felt about it. Then over this whole year working together, between coaching and building a business and just building our, friendship and then some, that feeling of being loved was probably what changed my life the most, I would say.
So you're saying love can change the world?
It changed mine.
Yay! Well, this is why it's tattooed on my body.
That's the light and love tattoo?
Love and light, yes.
Love and light.
Mm-hmm.
Love and light.
That's what I am.
Right. The Yin and Yang tattoo was my first favorite because that's a symbol I have known about probably since I was about 12 years old, and I have loved it ever since. It's going to be my first. It's going to be my
light
first
and
tattoo.
Dark. It's everything. Right. It's life.
I want a Yin and Yang tattoo, probably on my upper right shoulder, with 2 dragons. You have 2 dolphins, which is totally fucking you. I am not surprised. The most sexual creature on the planet.
Well, they're the only animal outside of humans that have sex for pleasure.
Right.
But that's not the only reason why the dolphins.
No, why the dolphins?
Because I've been a water baby my whole life, and dolphins are all about pleasure, about having fun. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I am the fun.
You are constantly the fun.
I know, right? If it's just a conversation like this where I'm like, yeah, like I don't go anywhere where people are like, oh, she's such a downer. That has never happened.
Right. We have this conversation before with like investors or other people are like, so why did you two work together? Well, it made sense to me. It's like she needed me and blah, blah, blah. And no, that's not why. I remember we worked.
Oh, what's the real reason then?
It was
She lied
fucking
to
fun
him.
working with you.
Thank
I
you.
was already working for another company that owed me like $40,000, and it was in my best interest to keep working for them and make them successful so they could pay me. But I'm like, nah,
They're no
fuck it.
fun.
They were boring and dull and techies, and I'm just like,
Life's too short to not have fun, my friend.
this is going to be way too fun. And this is why that first month of January was just all the validation in the world, because it was a blast. It was so much fun.
Why our clients love me so much, why my kids enjoy when I mean, like, they're literally like, it's all fun. Like, if we're not having fun working out, if we're not having fun doing this, yes, this is, I mean, okay, yes, of course, there's discipline involved in reaching any goal, but damn it should be some fun.
You can have fun with everything.
If your trainer isn't any fun, I question why you're with them.
Well, there's that guy on Twitter. What's it? Tyler.
Which one?
Tyler Todd.
Oh, yeah, he seems fun.
All the time.
Yeah.
Like, every time he puts up a video, he's always got a big smile on his face. He's always trying to make fun of everything. He has like dance parties with this little girl.
I really wish I had somebody that could follow me around and make videos like that, because then I'd put up the same kind of videos.
Did I mention I was moving to Orange County at some point?
So what, you're gonna be like my paparazzi, not a CTO? Okay.
Well,
I'm eye rolling right now in a very sarcastic way.
I already see. This is how much I know you. I know your voice changed enough to know that you're rolling your eyes. Yeah. No, it would be. I mean, this is we start with the podcast and then we create the blooper reel. It's just like, here's a day of Alli, and it's just lunatic fun.
Oh my god, that would be really funny. Oh yeah,
that might be our best marketing material if we did
that. Yes. And you can see all the crazy things that happen when I leave my son alone with my older son and I come home to a pile of poop on the floor that has seeped out through the diaper. And I'm looking at it going,
I have experienced
what's this? And my son's on the couch on the iPad going, I don't know. And I'm thinking, please tell me you ate some chocolate and it like melted into the carpet. And I look at the baby's bottom and I'm like,
that's not chocolate.
I am not that lucky.
Not today, bitch. Not today.
Not that lucky. No. Oh my God. There's a lot of shit that I wish I could get caught on tape just for that reason alone. Cause I'm like, you would never believe the stories I have if you didn't see the evidence. I am telling you, this is some crazy shit over here.
GoPro needs to like be listening to this. Like, how does GoPro not have some kind of like built-in thing that you could just like slip on your ear or something, like almost like AirPods, only it's a GoPro.
No, but then you'd never see my reaction to stuff. So it needs to be like a harness where the camera can pan around my face. So you catch all the horror.
Well, this is where you need all So what GoPro needs to do is they need to make like a drone that follows you around, an AI drone.
There we go.
That follows you everywhere you go.
That has like a 5-foot radius.
What is that? The Truman Show that Jim Carrey did?
Yeah, like a halo, like a little, yeah.
And they have cameras on them all the time.
I could see that. That would be awesome.
Something like that.
Yeah, it is a Truman Show. I mean, the stuff that I deal with. From the shitting in the bathtub to the shitting outside. I have
personal experience with this. I literally carried that kid upstairs with arms covered in his poop. It is.
Oh, you know what?
Wonderful and
not nearly as many times as me. If you got one, you didn't get nearly all the fun. No, you don't have multiple times. You weren't here that long. One experience. So yeah. So can you imagine? Can you imagine with all of his like medical issues, the digestive stuff that came with it?
Oh yeah.
I'm drumming my fingers on my knee right now. Yes, I am. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Lots of it. way,
I can imagine.
way more than the other two, because
By
he's
this
3.
point,
They were getting
but
potty trained by now. I don't have potty
right.
training anywhere on the horizon with this one, because I kind of think he should walk first.
And yeah, you're just kind of at the point like, hey, this isn't every day anymore.
Yeah. I mean, and
Or at
that's
least every other day. It's like, hey, I
that's
don't
a
have to clean
hallelujah right
shit off the
there.
car. I don't have to clean shit off my clothes today and the next day, and
I
I'm
mean,
good. It's once a
and
month or once a 6 months.
in my son's defense, he was just
Yeah.
wearing a diaper. He wasn't wearing any shorts. If he had been wearing shorts, it wouldn't have been on the carpet. It would have been in the shorts. So mom learned a valuable lesson. Don't be lazy and just change the diaper. Put a new
Ooh.
pair of shorts on him. Yeah. My fault.
I will
My
remember
fault.
that when there are kids in my purview in the
Oh,
near
don't
future.
worry. I'll be there to remind you.
Oh, I know you better be.
I'll be there to be like,
I'm counting on it.
Oh, we'll just let him crawl around in his diaper. I wouldn't recommend that. I really wouldn't recommend that shit. I promise you.
Yeah, I remember the story you told me. So the first time I changed Xander's diaper, you were actually gone picking up Morgan from swimming or something like that. And I was just at home with him. And he was sleeping. He was napping. I picked him up. He had a diaper full of pee at your home. Yeah. He had a diaper full of pee. I took him downstairs. I'm like, okay, never done this before. Never changed a baby's diaper before in my life. And he's full of pee to the point where his clothes were full of pee. So I'm like,
ooh,
okay,
yeah,
should probably deal with this. This has got to be uncomfortable. So I start figuring this shit out. It's not that complicated. But when you're doing something for the first time, it's just like there's a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of franticness. And I didn't realize I had the diaper off of him. I got the clothes off of him.
Too long, probably, right? Oh,
I had the clothes
my daughter
off
made
of him,
that mistake.
and I had the diaper off of him.
I'm crying right now.
And I had the diaper off for probably a good couple of minutes. And I remember telling you guys about this. And the look on you and Morgan's face was like, you left it off for 2 minutes? Because I had no idea.
2 minutes? Are you insane?
What the dangers of this was. And then you explained it.
He's looking at me right now.
Oh, I got lucky. I got very lucky.
You got super lucky. Because Morgan literally, like, okay, so I don't know. You've seen me change a diaper. I get the new diaper out and ready, and like, it's a quick swap, right?
It's like watching
that
a
is a
NASCAR tire
pro.
change.
It is. It's a pro's way of changing a diaper. The first time Morgan tried to change his diaper, oh sweet Jesus! Now, mind you, he's not an infant, so it's not like every time you open the flap, the floodgates flow. So, like, he's kind of controlling his pee. But
better, yes.
she left it off too long. It took her like 20 seconds, and she got shot. Man, did she get shot? And the look on her face, she was so stunned.
He just started pissing all over her.
I couldn't stop laughing because she's stunned and then she's shrieking and I am howling and she's like, ah! And I'm going, I just can't even right now. This is too funny.
This is too much.
My daughter's getting doused in pee and Xander's like just happy as anything. He's like, I'm having a blast.
He's like, I'm just letting it rip.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
He's like, I'm relieving pressure right now. I feel good.
Yeah, he's smiling right now. He's like, yep, I did that. Like, I did that. I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did not realize the danger that I was in.
Yeah.
While I had that off, because I took the diaper off and then I realized I needed to go get another one. Like it was that level of, I don't even know what the steps to this are. I just got the thing off of him because my first priority, what I was thinking was, he's got wet.
Get it off.
And I'm thinking, that was me, I would want that goddamn thing off of me. So I just did that. I'm like, oh, I got to put a new one on this kid. This is going to be interesting.
And then you were like, where are they?
Right.
They're right there. You know?
They're right there. Yeah. They were beside the couch. So I was like, okay. Then I pulled it out. I'm just like, which way does it go? Right. I'm trying to start figuring, okay, forward, backwards. It doesn't say forward and backwards.
So if it's
the straps.
If it's any consolation, you did better than the babysitter because I came home and found his diaper on backwards. And I was like, how the fuck did she even make this happen? Did she flip him over on his face and like strap it on that way? Like, how did she get this thing to stay on even for a second? Oh my goodness. And then, and it was all I could do to keep my face straight and go, hey, honey, come here. Let me show you how, like, these diapers are different than the ones you're probably used to. Let me show you how these work, because they have this little Velcro action thing here.
Were you just being nice when you said that?
Because I was, because it was all I could do not to go, how the fuck did you take this job and not know how to put on a diaper? But I'm not going to say that to one of my friends' kids. Oh no. Yeah. But I'm never condescending and stuff like that in that kind of moment, because it didn't matter who had done it. I would have been like, so let me show you a little bit better way of getting this on that won't be so difficult for you, because I want to empower them to always feel good. And, even if my clients come in, yes, even if my clients come in with what they think is a really stupid question, it's never stupid to me. I'm like, A, I've heard the question a million times. B, let me help you understand the fundamentals so that you will know how to think your way through this one in the future, because there's going to be similar questions that all stem from the same place. So let me help solve the bigger problem so you don't have a bunch of questions always feeling stupid, because this is not hard. This is not rocket science. This is fitness. I get that there's a lot of complicated stuff that can go into it, but it is at the end of the day, it's still your body. It's still, there's fundamentals. It will behave in predictable ways if you do predictable things. The challenge is the human is not predictable usually, and they tend not to follow a very simple path. They tend to go, this path is boring. Let me try 500 new paths, and they complicate the hell out of it.
And I
love humans.
I do too. And just like whether it's changing a baby's diaper or learning to do some exercise for the first time, a squat, a deadlift, or like we've seen with people cooking, like this is something that has become, it was an eye-opener to you when you heard about it, that there are a lot of people who do not know how to cook. Like basic things like how to scramble eggs.
My recipe that called for bake some salmon, the client's going, well, like,
how do I bake salmon?
How do you do that? And I went,
you wrap it in some tin
foil. Yeah. She's like, oh, okay. I'm thinking, I didn't realize people hadn't done that before. I need to create some videos on how to do this basic healthy cooking.
Yeah.
I need to bridge some gap here, because I don't think there's a lot of chef shows that you're going to wade your way through when you're just trying to figure out how to make one healthy meal. And you're like it's
very basic,
figuring out 500 different ways to cook salmon, because they all have this fancy take on it, because they're all assuming that that you could wrap a fillet in tin foil, pop it in the oven, and freaking have some baked salmon. Yeah. And I'm just trying to help you get a healthy meal. So I loved that inspired an idea to create the preparation videos for all of the recipes in the meal plan. I love that. I love all the feedback from our clients and all the questions. They definitely make me better at helping them and everybody else when they do that. It's wonderful.
And it is the key part of whether you're coaching or teaching or parenting, is this whole idea of, people will say, lead with love. And what does that mean? It means having the compassion to understand that not everybody understands the basics the way that you do. And if they don't have those basics, then it is very difficult for them to have any confidence. Because that can be one of the,
it's very embarrassing to reach out with the question.
And people will say, oh, well, if you want confidence, you need to do this or that or whatever. And the reality of confidence, I think that I've learned, is that there is no one thing that gives you confidence. There are a whole bunch of things that can take it away, though.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
Right.
Ooh.
It's not, you don't do one thing. You don't just go have sex with a woman and gain confidence. But
That's
if you
true.
never had, or a lot of other things, just basic things, like I can remember when I got to Orange County to visit you, and that was one of the things you mentioned. You were like, there's just a lot of basics that you've never actually gotten as a kid. And I'm like, it was, I remember feeling so ashamed, but not wanting to really feel it. Like, I was like, yeah,
No reason for you to feel ashamed. That's on your mom. It's on your
right.
parents. It's on your dad. That's not on
Mhm.
you. It's not
Right.
on you to
But it
teach
was the fact
yourself
that,
everything when you're underage. But it is on
no,
you to teach yourself when you're an adult and you have access and you can see the deficiencies. So this
that
is,
was the
yeah.
important part. It was like once I could see them, because I remember one of the things you pointed out, this was one of the things that tripped it for you, was we were coming back from the gym and you had Xander in the stroller, loading the stroller into the back of the truck, into the back of the SUV. And I just went and sat in the front seat like your 10-year-old does. Never even thought of
Yeah.
helping you. It's never crossed my mind. It wasn't even an awareness. It was just
You know,
like, okay, I'm gonna go sit in the truck and you got this because this is what you do every day.
Mhm.
And why would I, you know what I almost felt like? It was like I didn't want to interfere
I can understand that. So
because I didn't know what I was doing.
what was great that came from that is not only my ability to say, hey, you're a guy
Hmm. Yeah.
and you're capable, you should help. But I also did that to my 10-year-old. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
dude, help me out. Put the stroller away, get it out. And now, you know what he does all the time?
He gets the
He does
stroller out.
that or he puts it
Nice.
away. Like it's very
Right.
rare now. Like if he hops in the car and doesn't help, he really has some need that like he feels like he needs to meet. Like it's usually because he's so hungry that he's like
Hmm.
dying to get to his food that's in the car that's waiting for him, and like
That I can,
he just
that's a man
and
thing. I can understand
well,
that.
and it's also a kid thing. I can totally understand that too.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
like for the most part, I don't ever have to say anything to him anymore. So your deficiency in that moment became a proficiency for my family. Everything is a yin
Hmm.
yang. Everything has
This is why
a
this is my
balance
first
and a
tattoo.
counterbalance.
I will get that. That will be my tattoo. I think I will probably, I don't know when I'm going to get it.
Design it yourself. Don't go pick one off the wall. Like I designed
No,
all of mine.
and I
Wow,
got
that sounded
advice.
like I have a lot. I don't have a lot.
You have
Just
three. Yeah.
three. Yeah.
There's a cute little pair of lips.
They're mine.
Yep. But like the the thing I think I got, well, on the tattoo thing, the advice I'd always heard, especially I think I heard from you too, was lose the weight first.
Yeah.
Don't get tattoos when you've got a bunch of body fat because your skin's gonna shrink and it's gonna fuck them all
It's
up.
gonna look weird. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that'll probably
Definitely
happen at
wait.
first. And there's probably spots that aren't as bad. Like I don't think I would get any around like my stomach, just because that's the place that's gonna, especially on guys, when you've been my 60-inch whatever waist. It's like that's the part that's gonna shrink the most before I see abs. And I don't know if I would
And a
around
lot
my
of
waist
skin.
anyway. Yeah, I
No, I
don't know if
can't
I would.
imagine. Like I just yeah,
I think
no.
sleeves look
Shoulder
good
will
on
be
a
good.
guy.
Mm,
Yeah, shoulders,
shoulder will be fine.
sleeves, chest, back, chest, upper back is kind of
Hmm.
the usual spots.
Yeah.
But no.
But I think that the way you're transforming during your body transformation, you may or may not change your mind. You may or may not change aspects of that idea or placements of that idea. So I would wait until you here's my opinion on tattoos.
Okay.
Don't get one until you can't stop thinking about it, until you get to the place where you're like, I can't wait any longer. I have to go. Like
Yeah, I'm not
right
there
now.
yet.
No, no. Until you're there, you should not get one.
I've had the idea of lot. Like I remember there was a time, I think it was probably late 2019, good bit before I met you, where I actually was like thinking in my mind of all the tattoos that I wanted. And I had
Hmm.
some really deep metaphors and symbology going through my head, like angels fighting demons and like a lot of like
Hmm.
almost
Some of that might
some,
fade away.
Probably
Some
would
of that
have.
might fade away. Yeah.
That could a
I
lot of
don't
that could
see
have
angels
been a
fighting
moment.
demons on you. Yeah, I could see that in that time, but I don't know that I see that in you now.
Probably not as much.
Yeah.
And it's probably good. Well, I think that was kind of like, maybe that's the interesting part about tattoos, is that they're permanent at the time that you get them. But if you get
Hmm.
like sleeves done over time,
It
it's like
tells
you
a
almost
story.
you get to see the transitions of your life.
Yeah. But I
Which
don't
kind of
know
begs
that,
the argument for getting them earlier rather than later, right?
or it begs the argument for getting them later rather than earlier. Like, do you really want to watch that transformation again?
You
Do you really
may
want
or
to
may
bring
not
up,
want to.
do you really want to bring
Yeah.
the past back into your present every single day? Or can you just let it go and focus on where that new
Hmm.
person is, where that transformated person is, rather than the transformation? Because transformation is almost always painful.
I would argue it. Yeah, I might even
You'd,
go to the
you'd
extreme.
agree? You wouldn't
I
argue?
Well, I would argue that it is always painful.
Oh, you'd argue against the almost.
I
Yeah.
guess yeah, I'm being slightly more specific. It's like, almost, really. I'm thinking, if
So,
there's not pain, it's not transformation. It's
so
just,
I would
yeah.
say that I would not want to carry that pain around with me all the time and look at it. I would want the beauty of the butterfly, not the struggling
The caterpillar.
of of the caterpillar coming out of the chrysalis. I
Hmm.
don't know that I'd want that there. I'd want the butterfly there. Just a thought, something to
Hmm.
consider. And I think a really good place to end episode number 2, because I think this has been going for a little while.
A little while. Uh-huh. You remember when the first time I mentioned this, if anybody's still listening at this point, the first time I mentioned these podcasts, she was like, I think we could probably do it for like 30 minutes or so. And I remember
I am
laughing
eye
like,
rolling and shaking my head with a
I
smirk
know
right
you
now.
are.
It's like,
Because I
oh,
was just like,
silly
30
Alli.
minutes. 30 minutes, huh? It's like, I know how much you like to talk. That was half of the eye roll I had at the time. And it was just like, no, I no podcast. You get into some of these subjects, and it's just like, this was a good one though.
Well,
I like that we dipped into some stories that were
I do
real.
too. I know we wanted to do that, and I like our format of putting out the what's new with Bod in the beginning. So
Yeah,
if no one makes it past that into all
yeah.
the juicy, detaily stuff, then like at least they get that and they can listen and be like, oh, cool. But like if they want to get into the juicy backstory of all the all the
And I think
craziness, and then like get into the myth busting and all the, I can't wait to get into some of that stuff. Like I was thinking about it during cardio today. I was like, all the myths we're going to bust. You can't build muscle and burn fat at the same time.
I want you to go
Really?
off on hip thrusters at some
Oh,
point. I'm going to find a way to
oh
trigger you
my
on hip
God.
thrusters
You're
and
going
just
to
let you
trigger
rant
me
for
on
fucking
hip
10 minutes.
thrusters.
I am.
Ah,
Oh yeah, this is going to
okay.
become a theme of this podcast, is where I'm going to like,
How to
never
trigger
mind,
Alli into
never mind
getting mad
burying a
about
lead.
some bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
see it.
Never mind
So
burying
like,
a lead. I'm
oh,
going to
and the
bury
more
a
you
trigger.
exercise, the hungrier you are. Yeah, no, I haven't seen that. Uh oh, your
Oh
body
shit.
wants to yeah, I mean like, oh, if you do too much cardio, you're gonna burn muscle.
That's a
No.
thing.
I mean,
Oh my,
there's
wow.
so much stuff out there that I'm like,
You're going to burn
oh,
muscle. That's a new
there
one.
there is more, there's more myths around how to be fit than there is actual science, I think.
I had a
And more
friend
shit
of,
that and there's like so much stuff that it's like, I see people post studies on Twitter and they're literally being like, well, this study says blah, 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 blah. And I'm over here going, yeah, but 25 years of experience trumps your little theory about how that works. And here's how it actually works in real life. The longer I do cardio, the more fat I burn. No, I don't burn up muscle. I'm burn like, I know
yeah.
you want to sell your cute little 30-minute, 2 times a week muscle training program, Sparky, but I'm sorry, abs were made on the step mill,
You gotta
not just in the
burn
kitchen.
calories to get, yeah.
Yeah, you
You
can't
need
just
both.
lift weights and eat well and expect to be lean.
You gotta do all of the
Sorry.
above. All of the
It's
above.
like you
Yeah.
you're gonna have to take your turns on the cardio. And I'm not talking like the slow burn type of shit. I'm talking
you gotta go. Yeah.
I'm
Get that
talking the
160 plus
high,
heart rate.
yeah, for a long
Well,
time.
this is
Like,
why I had a conversation with a friend earlier this week, and he was saying one of the most dangerous words that goes around the internet today is the word misinformation. Because
yeah.
everybody tries to say, well, this is misinformation. You should listen to me instead. And it's
That's
just
a
like,
really good point.
that's called gaslighting.
It is gaslighting.
That's what that is.
Well, there's our hint for if somebody says misinformation. Oh, I know you're going to gaslight me.
Yeah.
And maybe the new one is unpopular opinion. I only did that once recently because I was thinking about
that's such a common thing on Twitter right now.
It has been, and most
of them are unpopular for a reason.
Well, no, it's always a popular opinion. They're calling unpopular so they can get attention and agreement.
Oh,
but my unpopular opinion was if your feet pronate, if you have flat feet, you should not be training barefoot. I saw a guy in the gym. He clearly had very low profile shoes. He very clearly pronated. And I'm like, this motherfucker's going to throw up a bunch of weight on top of his back. And this is not good from the ground up. And I know my son, my little guy has some pretty
very pronated feet.
He's very pronated. I mean,
that's part of his development issue.
A lot of toddlers have flat feet, but like this guy needs orthotics and high top shoes. He needs ankle deep orthotics
to help bring him into way
neutral.
More pronated than the other, right?
Well, yeah.
A little bit,
but so like he needs his shoes in order to be able to stand stably and be able to move forward with walking. Like this is just the way it is for right now. Could his arches improve over time? Sure, they're muscles like anything else. But when I see an adult hit the squat rack, hit the free weight squat rack. I'm not talking like a Smith machine. I'm talking like squat rack. And I'm looking at his feet and I'm thinking, oh God, okay. This is probably that same old bullshit that I hear about work out barefoot. And I'm
you know what we should do?
No, almost nobody should work out barefoot. Number one, drop a weight on that toe and you are losing the tip of it. Number two, almost no one has perfect arches. Almost no one. It's so hard. I have one foot that's slightly more pronated than the other, but I have super high arches from a lot of years of dancing when I was in my developmental stage. And I wear tennis shoes. I do not want to have an unneutral ankle when I train, especially if I'm loading my body, loading my spine with weight. Are you kidding me? Anyway, yeah, that was my only unpopular opinion because it really actually is unpopular.
This is exactly why this is going to become a part of our podcast. I am going to search for things to trigger Alli with because you just saw how she went off, and I love this part. I love it. It's just you have these great opinions and these great insights. And I think it's worth people hearing them, and I think it would be a good thing to.
All right. Well, I think so too. And I think that it would be very unnatural if I came in with an agenda to talk about something, and it comes off far more real when I'm triggered into talking about something that I know after a quarter century plus of experience is either A, the case, or B, not the frickin' case. And I don't care what people say now. The only reason people are getting any attention in their ridiculous ideas of fitness and training barefoot and bullshit like that is because of social media. But
right.
I mean, yeah, I am so glad there wasn't social media when I was coming up as a trainer, because I would have been pressured into being a ridiculous idiot.
Right. And then we might have never met.
Oh, guaranteed I would have burned out a long time ago.
Right. Especially with all the nonsense that's out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's complete nonsense. And I mean, the imposter is a big enough of a jerk to deal with
There's a podcast in itself. We're gonna do one of those. Maybe not like right away.
So we're gonna
there's
press
definitely gonna
pause on the imposter and save
we're gonna
it.
press pause on the imposter because this is 2 hours in.
Jesus, I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. This is great. This is podcast. This is exactly
nobody listens for 2 hours. You're like, oh, Alli.
Shoot with your nonsense. Shoot with your nonsense.
Oh, Alli, do you know anything? That was what you said.
Right.
Basically.
All right. So let's wrap this one up then. This was really, really good.
Are we creating like a tagline to wrap something up? Like, okay, everybody, we want you to feel sexy naked. Come train with us. I mean, I don't know. What are we doing? This is so new to me. I know.
I think that's something that'll evolve over time. I think we've started to roll out an intro.
Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about it. But let's wrap this one up then. So,
all right. Bye, everyone. We love you.
Love you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.